So what exactly does that mean?
Recording in progress.
So what in the world does that mean? Why? What's the problem with this? The problem is that we Jews are not into proselytizing people. We're not into trying to bring confidence. In fact, we try to discourage people from converting. Yes, have a Shem Mrs. B'nai Noach. You yourself a piece of Olam Haba. You don't need 613 commandments. You don't need all this. So what in the world does the Gemara mean that a Kadosh Baruch Hu specifically dispersed the Jewish people to the four corners of the world in order that there should be an increase in converts, people joining the Jewish faith? What was that? So the Yaakov Tzaddik says, the Yaakov Tzaddik says, quote this Gemara, and he first starts out the paragraph by saying, we've been in such a long post. This is hundreds of years ago already. He said, we've been in such an unbelievably long post. In order for us to get out of this post, we have to hold on tightly to the seal of Hashem. What is the seal of Hashem? The seal of Hashem is emes, the truth. And he says that a person shouldn't lie, whether it comes to a Jew or to a guy, not to do any type of shtick, no type of tarmis. He says, quotes the pasuk, She'eris Yisrael lo yasa avla. The Jewish people, the remnants of the Jewish people should not do anything, any wrongdoing. Lo yidabru chazav, lo yimatzu b'fiyam lashon tarmis. They shouldn't speak falsely. Everything should be erlich. And he says, unbelievable. He says, the reason what that Gemara means in Psachim is not that we're going to proselytize by giving shiurim to goyim to convert. It means that when they see how we want Jews all over the world, because when they see how a Jew behaves, what does it mean how a Jew behaves? What? They see their Shabbos? He sees the Jews' Yontif? No, specifically says the Yaakov Tzaddikim, they see how honest they are in business. They see that their word is a word, that their handshake is a handshake, that they're erlich. He says that's what impresses the guy. And that's the greatest Kiddush Hashem of all. The greatest Kiddush Hashem of all is that the non-Jew sees us and they say, wow, I can't believe it. Because what's their entree to the Jewish people? It's not Shabbos, it's not shaking a lulav, it's not your mezuzahs. Okay, midas. Yeah, okay, be nice, polite. But the ikar is, what's their ikar worldview of the Jews is when it comes to business. They do business with Jews. That's how they get to know us. And if they see that a Jew's honest, that a Jew's erlich, then it creates the greatest Kiddush Hashem in the world. And they want to become Jews because of it? Because I've never seen such honesty, such erlich in my life. That's unbelievable. And that's really what it's... what it's all about. It says again, so I try to make it short. So, Ramosha's Yurtzeit, Ramosha Feinstein's Yurtzeit. Rabin shall call B'nai Yisrael. Was this past Shabbos? Yud Gimel Adar. So I remember once my Rabbi said that, so they had asked him a shaila, why is it that Hascholas Gemara, when you start Gemara, you start Bava Metzia, it's not so easy. Why not start with something a little more so-called practical? Why not start with brachas, the Shabbos, Yaakov? It's easier for kids to sink their teeth into. So said Rav Moshe, no. The Messiah is we start with Bava Metzia and other such Mesechtas. Why? Bava Metzia, because you learn from childhood, it's ingrained in their heart and in their soul. Hey, this doesn't belong to you. It doesn't, it has a siman on it. You can't take it, you have to announce it. This, you're a damager if you do this, you're chayiv because you damaged. Here you're chayiv, here you're potter. It's all about erlichkeit, it's all about being honest. And we want to ingrain that within the youth from the earliest age. the earliest stage, we want to make sure that they grow up with this Weltanschauung, that life is about being Ehrlich. It's mine. It's mine. If it's not mine, you have to return it. And if you damage something, you have to pay for it. And we get into the nitty-gritties of it, into the depths of it, because honesty and integrity is so crucial. I think maybe that's why, when children start Chumash, which Chumash do they start with? Vayikra, right? Why do they start with Vayikra? So the standard, I think the standard line is, well, Vayikra, it's about Karbonis, it's about the Beis HaMikdash, the Mishkan, so it's Kedusha, the Tahara, and children begin learning Torah, they're Kodesh, there's no Chet, right? They don't sin, they're not mitzvah yet, bas mitzvah yet. Okay, so they're learning, so that's Kedusha and Tahara. I would like to suggest another reason why it's not Vayikra. Because in Vayikra, Pasuk tells us, when a person from you brings a korban. So the question is, why does it say Adam? Just say, Ki Yaakov became korban. When you bring a korban, Adam. So says Rashi, you know why it says Adam? Lama nemar, Adam lama nemar, ma Adam harishon loy hikriv min agezel, shakol oyer shalom, because everything belonged. The Adam harishon, there wasn't even a whiff, an iota, the minutest detail of gezel, because Adam owned the whole world. Wasn't shy of gezel. So that's why it says Adam here. Maybe that's why we start with Vayikra. The same thing that Rav Moshe said why we start with Bava Metzia. Because we want to ingrain right away from the children, this is the Iggis. What's this? It's the second puzzle. Right? Adam ki Yaakov became korban. Why does it say Adam? Adam, because you have to make sure when you want to bring sukkah and you want to bring karbonis, just make sure that it's clean money, absolutely clean. Absolutely clean. That's the lesson we're learning. And there's a lot more to say. I'll just end with Sanzer Rebbe and others. Ingrid de Pirkel, who was a Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov, said an amazing thing, that one of the reasons why, in fact, that's why the Sanzer Rebbe never gave a bracha to anybody. They asked for their kids for a bracha. He wouldn't give a bracha unless you paid up the makovet, unless you paid up the gross. So they all say the same idea, is because if you're not paid up and you're taking stuff and you're not paying for it, it's gzeila. If you steal, if you take money that doesn't belong to you and you buy food with that money, you take food with that money, that food has a din tarfus. And we all know that, of course, all mitzvahs and averos affect the soul of a person. But there's nothing like when it comes to kashrus, when it comes to food, if it's treif, it's mamish poison for the neshama, absolute poison. He says, you want to know sometimes why children, when they're young, they look like they're such tzaddikim and they daven and they learn it, and all of a sudden as they get older, they just go off. Now again, speak to your Uncle Rabbi about this, but he says, you know why? Because maybe the parents did some business or got some money ill-gotten, and then they bought food with it. Food has a din of tarfus, and they gave it to the child. Therefore, that's the reason why the child's neshama is infected and is poisoned. Maybe that's why they went off. Anyway, you just see the seriousness of it, that at the end of the day, you have to be Mekadosh Shem Shemayim. And the greatest way to be Mekadosh Shem Shemayim, the greatest ways the Orchot Tzaddikim says to bring the Geula is to be erech, is to be honest, is to earn kosher money, to make sure that we set the bar, we set the example to the world of what it means to be an honest people. Okay, thank you. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Sure. Go ahead.
Stay long now.
Yeah, okay, I got it.
See how we go. It's still recording.
Get a standard.
It's still recording?
Yeah. You gotta get a standard. I like the standard. Gruenstein ended with the Baal Shem Tov, so I'll begin with the Baal Shem Tov. That many people are bothered very often about Halacha when it comes to going to a Beis Din, Halacha in business. In the more modern world, they don't even have a Havamina that you go to a Beis Din. You go to court. The courts deal with business, and rabbis deal with Hilchos Nida, and rabbis deal with kashrus, and rabbis deal. There's a whole chelik of Shulchan Aruch, Choshen Mishpat, and a Jew is obligated to go to a Beis Din and not to Arkos, not to secular courts. You're not allowed to go to secular courts also unless you have a chelik from a Beis Din. So why are people bothered? Because very often you'll have a case where, according to all logic, you know that you're innocent, or you know you're not chayav this person money, or you know that he is chayav you money, and nevertheless, al pi halacha, it's going to come out that he's going to be patur and he's not going to have to pay. You know he has an obligation, but you don't have witnesses, you don't have edim. There's a very high level, a very high threshold of evidence necessary to be mechayev someone money, and therefore it's very bothersome because in a secular court, so in a criminal case, what's the threshold of evidence that you have to bring? Beyond a reasonable doubt. You have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt to have someone have a criminal offense. For a civil court, what's the level of threshold of evidence? Called a preponderance of the evidence. You just have to prove more likely than not. You have to bring a lot of proofs, and the jury sits there or the judge sits there and he looks at all the proofs and he makes a logical judgment based on how well you made your arguments, how many documents you brought supporting your claim, how many witnesses. But it's reasonable. Be reasonable. So I need 2 Eidim Dafka, I've been into a kinyan, I have to lift up a handkerchief so that I'm not chayav. It's not fair. I know he owes me money. If I go to a Beis Din, I'm not going to get the money. If I go to a secular court, I'm going to get the money. And I know I'm right. So it bothers a person. Why do I have to go to Beis Din? It's not fair. Beis Din is going with this strange set of archaic rules that you find in the Torah. It doesn't make any sense. So listen to this amazing Baal Shem Tov. That's what he says. So at the very beginning of Parshas Mishpatim, the Parsha says, Eila ha-mishpatim asher tasim lifnehem. So these are mishpatim you put before you. So Isa b'Zohar HaKadosh, the Zohar says, Ilen sidurin del gilgulin. So Parshas Mishpatim, which is all of the legal laws that we go through in courts, and damages. So the Zohar says, this Parsha, Rotzei Lomar, is Inyan HaParsha of Gilgulin. This whole Parsha is talking about reincarnation, Gilgulin. If you had to pick one parsha that has nothing to do with Gilgulim, it would be Mishpatim. What in the world does Parshas Mishpatim have to do with Gilgulim? You have Gilgulim all over the Torah, and they speak about Korach was a Gilgul of this, and Moshe was a Gilgul of that. But Parshas Mishpatim, you don't even have any biblical characters. Who's a Gilgul of who? How could you say that that is the parsha that speaks about Gilgulim? So says the Baal Shem Tov, "V'hu tamua shaharei parsha medaber b'dinim amos." It's talking about monetary law. What in the world does that have to do with Gilgulim? Elash yitachet. So he says this is what it means. You go to Beis Din and the Beis Din says you are chayav to pay that person money. Even if you know for a fact that you are right and he is wrong, and yet the Beis Din says you're chayav to pay him money. But the Torah says you're chayav. You didn't kid him, you didn't have edim, whatever it was that you were lacking. So don't ask yourself the question, how could this be? How could this be? You have to trust the Torah is Torah's emes, and all of its ways are pleasant. This is the truth of the Torah, and this is the pleasantness of the Torah, that it's going to make you pay that money. Why? I know I'm innocent. Because it must be that you were obligated to this person money in a previous incarnation, in a previous life. This guy that you're in a court case with. And now the Torah says you're obligated so that you're going to give back that money that you took from him in a previous life. And this guy that's lying and he's cheating, so who else did? Don't worry, he's going to end up paying for that. But you had to give the money back because that's your tikkun in this world. You had to return that money. He's saying something very, very special, very amazing. That if you want to be guaranteed to have a tikkun in this lifetime, and to correct and rectify whatever it is you're sent into the world to rectify, you have to do everything in your life al pi Torah. The Torah is going to guarantee that whatever you're supposed to do in this world gets done and gets accomplished. If you live al pi Torah, so Hashem doesn't play games. He sends you here for a mission. The mission is follow the Torah. If you follow the Torah, Hashem will make sure that you always encounter each person you're supposed to encounter, and every relationship you're supposed to have, and every damage you're supposed to suffer. It's all going to happen within ha'emes. But if a person goes to a secular court, even if he knows he's right, maybe al pi emes la'amito, in the eternal sense of things, you weren't supposed to get that money, or you were supposed to give that money to him. So when you go to Beis Din, even if you leave saying, I didn't know that he owed me the money, couldn't get it because I told him didn't have it, China, we didn't do the Kenyan, it doesn't matter. You should walk with a big smile on your face because you know for a fact that whatever took place in that Beis Din, it was Paskin al Pi Torah. That's exactly what's supposed to happen. That's emes, that's the ultimate cosmic eternal truth. That was what's supposed to happen. That's the Moshe said. The not little Beis Din may look good in Svara, and you may feel like you're walking away with money. You could have just stolen that person's money. Not only in a halachic sense, which it is, say, if you take money out, it should be din from a secular court, but maybe even if you won and it would have aligned the Torah. But nevertheless, you really owed him that money in a previous Gilgul. So it's always got to go to Beis Din, and even if you lose, you should have a big smile on your face. And that's what Baal Shem Tov teaches us. Okay, so now we get into the halachas. Okay, fascinating cases. Here we're doing the halachas of employees and employers. It's also Spiros Kollel. This is Siman Shin Lamed Gimel in the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, so here's the case, and I'm sure this has happened to people. You know that. You call an electrician to come to your house to do some work, and he doesn't have any slots this week, so he schedules you in like 2 weeks from now. So, okay, fine. On a Wednesday and 2 weeks from now, you kind of save up all the things that he has to do, or he's a handyman, and you have a whole list, and it's pretty much a day's work. And you say, okay, 2 Wednesdays from now, show up at my house, and he'll do the work. Okay, so 2 Wednesdays later, he gives you a call, and you totally forgot about this appointment because it was 2 weeks ago, and you had to go out of town on business, and you totally didn't realize that he was going to even show up. And he's calling you all morning, and you're not answering, you're not picking up. So finally, busy all morning, you look at your phone at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and you see like 10 missed calls from this electrician. And he says, look, I was calling you all morning, and I didn't even drive to your house because you live a half hour away, so I called you to make sure to confirm our appointment. You didn't answer your phone. I lost an entire day's work. I had other clients that could have used me today. You have to pay me for the day's work that I lost. Who's right in that situation? Do you have to pay him for the day's work that he lost? And does he have to prove to you that he had other clients available? What if he didn't have any other work available? You didn't really cause him a loss. Is this an out-of-pocket loss? Or is this what's called minias reva? He's just losing out on profit. When you have someone that you hire and there's no contract, again, no contract, no Kenyan, it's just a verbal phone call. You say, yeah, come at this time and you'll do this work. So then what is your obligation to that person? And who and when are you allowed to back out? That's the sugi of Spiros Kollel. So that's one question that we're going to have to answer. And question number 2 is very, very common shilas that happen all the time in the basin, is when it comes to ganim, especially in Lakewood, to a gan, to like a preschool, little kids group. Okay, so you have loads of preschools, and there's obviously always more kids than preschools in a place like Lakewood. So they always need more. So what happens? It's very hard to secure a spot. So you have to usually take a down payment or something like that. Okay, so this family waited until the end of the season. Usually you secure your spot a year in advance. So they waited toward the end of the sign-up season. And they call up the gan and they say, okay, we want to come to your gan. They say, okay, great. Let's say no down payment at all. Just says, okay, fine, you got a spot. Okay. Later on, as they get very close to the beginning of the school year, so the mom says, you know what? I decided to change my mind. I want to switch my kid to a different gan. I think that she needs a smaller playground. She needs more personal attention. They offer these therapies. There's a good reason to switch. And she says, I want to switch. So the Gananet says, okay, that's very nice, but you owe me for this spot. You owe me a full year's tuition because I gave up other people that would have wanted that spot. And they ended up going to a different gan, and you made me lose out on a full year's tuition. So you owe me for the whole year. These cases happen all the time. So what is the halacha in that case? Does the mother owe for the spot? Do we say that she caused a loss to this gan? So she tied us back. You know, it was the end of the season. I waited dafka till the end, and nobody was looking for spots at that time. I know because you're the only gan that had a spot open. and you have to prove to me that you had someone else lined up for the spot. If you can prove to me that you had someone else lined up for the spot, so then maybe you have a time. If you can't, then I don't owe you anything. What do you think first? Any gut reactions? First, the electrician case. What would you say the electrician case? That's a common case.
I think you have that language, both the guy and the, that's the language in there, because they terminate stolen money, so, because it should be. Well, right, I don't think you guys should be kind, because it should be, it's kind of acceptable that people will cancel, that's just, that's your problem, you should have backup, shut people on the wait. Just because you're an electrician, you gave your job to things, you know, cancel. You should have a backup, why should I be obligated to pay you?
There also should be a statute of limitations on that. You can't pull a guy out of the phone and say, hey, by the way, I need you.
That's more establishing the loss. When is it going to generate a guaranteed loss? Let's say the guy says he had a loss. He lined up, he reserved his day. Every week he has a calendar. He's an electrician. He's making appointments in a week. Remember, 2 weeks in advance is when he booked you, so he clearly had a pretty full schedule. And now he says, you caused me to lose that day. I would have had it booked. Miss Thumb, I would have had it booked. I had lots of calls. Okay, I didn't put anyone on that day because you already reserved the whole day for me. Okay, so minus the fact of what? So very good. That's a good question. So how much do you owe him? So he didn't do any work. Yeah, schar b'tala. So we have a concept in halacha says that even if I caused you a loss, but you got to hang out on the beach instead of changing light bulbs.
Especially, but there's something else that says, and that, I need a job right now, you get paid twice as much as you would be the first time. So does he owe the original customer that difference?
No.
Why not? Because now if not for this guy getting the job, he would lost the extra. Second.
Okay, that's even if there's no grumman causing, you're not owed that money. You're receiving. Let's say he finds a different job, or you find him a different job. You call him up and say, you know what? My father-in-law also needs work at his house, and he lives over here. Sorry, I messed up your schedule, but go there and work for him. Let's say. So now does he have any kind of? Hey, you replace it. Ziva time. That's a separate time. I don't think Ari is gonna hold in court, but that you want to pay. But let's say you at least fill up his loss. So if you fill his loss and say, I have a different job, he says, you know, I want that job. Your job. I'd rather sit on the beach. Pay me schar b'tala. Sit on the beach. I reserved this day. I don't have to take a different job. I never said I was going to take a different job. You messed me over. You told me to come today. You never canceled. I called you 10 times in the morning. Okay. And would there be a difference if the guy showed up to the job? If that electrician, my case was where he called you 10 times, you never drove there. Let's say he drove there and he showed up at your house. So is that going to make any difference? We'll see, that's going to be a very, very important point in the halachas. That's silent. Our word. That's you checked if the work was still viable. Here, for sure, the work was still there to be done. But it's halachah. Did he go down?
I don't know if there's anything on the page saying it should be like. When you call them before.
For sure,
that
that would go by the minhag. Usually there's a 24-hour cancellation policy. Yeah, usually a 24-hour cancellation policy, and then even that might, if it's not a clear minhag, it could be whatever's reasonable. The Beis Din will determine if you gave him 12 hours notice, okay, that's reasonable. But if you gave him 2 hours notice, so there's no way he's gonna find another job. Okay, so let's see the halachas of Schiras Poa. And all of this is where you made verbal contracts. Anytime you make a contract and you make kinyanim and you decide that this is going to be the terms, you're allowed to do that. As long as it doesn't go connected to halacha, and you're supposed to do that. You're encouraged to do that to avoid all the vagueness that's going to happen and get into all these machlokas that we're about to see. But you're always encouraged to be very, very clear about your policies and to have someone sign on the dotted line, which is kinyan. It's going to be a valid kinyan. Someone signing the contract. That's always advised. But here are cases where you didn't. It was Hamish. You just did it about that. Okay, so says Shulchan Aruch, Shinam Megillah Sefard. Hasofer es hapolim vehetu es balabais or balabais hete osam ein lehem zeh al zeh ella taroines. So if a balabais hires an olim, the workers are hired out to the balabais, and either one decides that no, I'm not showing up to work. The balabais says, sorry, stay home. I don't need you. So they have no claim against one another other than taromis, other than a right to be upset at the other person. You're allowed to be upset at the other person. Okay? That's what it says. But then it says. When is that the case where everyone has the right to back out and there's no monetary claim, although you're not nice, and some hold that you shouldn't do it, and it's not an error thing to do, but taromis means you can be angry at him, rightfully so, but you don't have a monetary claim. So when do we say that you're allowed to back out? She'ein lehem olav taromis, b'shelo halchu davka, b'shelo hayu yicholim lahaskir atzmam emesh. Kishasafim balabai said, it's davka, they didn't have another job the night before when you hired them. So they had no other potential labor. So they had one job on the table, you hired them, and then he said, don't come. So did you cause them any loss? No, you didn't cause them a loss. They had nothing else on the table. They were going to sit around doing nothing all day anyway. So what'd you do to them? So that's why they have no claim against you. They can just be upset because you got their hopes up. So they can have a time to back. Let's see what he says. So we're going to see who is the onus of proof. But if they could have been hired yesterday, the Achshav Einam Niskarim Klal, and now you canceled an hour before the job, and they can't get another job to fill its place. So now you caused them a loss. You caused them a loss. And you have to pay them their schar kapol batel, which means the difference between having to work that day or sitting on the beach. Which we say, how much would you take to not have to work today, but to still you have to earn a living? So how much would you take?
That's standard rate.
So the Taz says that the baseline, although we don't go with this, but this is where the starting point is 50%. Which is interesting, 50%. Okay, but they say it goes case by case. Because the guy had a super easy job. It actually says that if you have a job that you love, if you're a Melamed, so then there's no such thing as schar batala. Because Melameds love teaching Torah and learning Torah, and they'd rather teach and learn Torah than have a day off. Because what are they going to do on the day off? They're going to go to the base measures and learn anyway. So they don't really have any schar batala, so you have to pay them the full amount. And then it says, unless you know that the guy's lazy and he doesn't like learning so much, and he doesn't have any other job prospects, so he's tutoring kids. So then when they cancel on him, he's like, oh great, I'm gonna go play basketball, I'm gonna go watch TV, then you would pay him schar batala and he would not get the full amount. So it is subjective. Every case. Huh? Today was a day. Today I really want to. Yeah, so that's the Beis Din will determine what's schar batala. Okay? Who doesn't schar batala? The imli schar b'pachos, and if they get a different job, but it's making less money than the job they were hired for, then you have to pay them the difference. So you were going to pay them $1,000 that day. They get a different job last minute for 500. You owe them the 500 that you caused them to lose. Okay, that's all in the case.
That's why I don't think
What?
if you've got a job that they do a huge job, when you start you hiring for a huge job and then you got a very small job, you pay the full difference.
Yeah,
You've got the same type of work.
You've paid him the full difference minus the schar batala. If he finished much earlier in the day, we still are going to factor in schar batala. How much he benefit from not having to do your job?
Schedule tomorrow.
If he agrees to reschedule tomorrow, yeah, everything you can do. It's all about what he made you lose out on. It's what he made you lose out on. It's what the other job was. It's what the other job was. Not about the job right now. It's what the other job was that you could have had. So usually you have a normal rate per day. So you lost your rate per day. So he owes you for a day's work. Okay. So that is the halacha. Now there's going to be one factor we're going to throw in a minute, but let's first dissect that and understand why do you owe the money. So interestingly enough, the Gemara never talks about this case where the balabais, the employer, drops the employee. Never talks about the case. It talks about the case in the opposite direction. The employee agreed to do work for the employer, and the employer's work was time sensitive. So in that case, he had some flax that was soaking in the mishra, and if you don't take it out within the next 10 hours, it's going to all. So he hires the employee to take it out, and the employee cancels on him with no good reason, no onus. He cancels on him. So then the Gemara says the employee needs to pay for the loss. He needs to pay for the loss of flax. So now the Rishonim say, okay, that's the svara. So let's do the exact same thing in the opposite direction. Now the employer, the Gemara never speaks about this case, fires the employee, and the employee loses out on a day's work because he could have had work the night before. He had other calls. So you caused him a loss, so now you have to pay it. Right? It goes both ways, a two-way street. If he didn't have any work the night before, so everyone agrees, ein lo alav ela taromis. He can be angry at you, but he has no monetary claim. But if he had work the night before, so it's the same case. You caused him a loss. Right? That's the way we say it. Okay, so what's the mechanism operating here? So in the case where he caused your flax to get ruined, and he quit on you, which is the case of the Gemara, it's very clear that we're talking about Dine Nezikin. He caused you damage, out-of-pocket loss. I had some beautiful flax stoking, and it's now ruined, so I lost my flax, so you have to pay me for it. That's it. Here, what did he make you lose out on? The employee, if you're the employee, what did he make you lose out on? Profit, no out-of-pocket loss. It's called Menias Reva. He caused you to lose out on profit. That's a whole different set of halachas. You can't borrow from Dine Nezikin damages into Menias Reva. We know that when it comes to Davar Avud, the Hefsid, there's many different halachas. Menias Reva, by Hilchos Kolamoed, many halachas. There's a very big difference between out-of-pocket loss and foregone profits. So here, by the employee losing his day's work, it's just foregone profits. So what's the mechanism that's being mechayev the employer to have to pay him for the day's work that he lost?
What
It
if
says that
he-
he paid foregone profits.
If you knew for sure that you would get something else, what is it? There will be damage.
There's no out-of-pocket loss. No. Damage means I have money or
What
objects
if you
and
know
they're.
it's the same thing? That,
That's right, that's every day's profit. That's every day's profit. It's gotta be that I have something right now that you caused me to lose. It's I don't have it right now, it's not nezek. So then, well, how are you being mechayev this employer to have to pay? It's yes, revenue. So the Maharam quoted by the Ketos, this is how the Ketos passed it. He says, you know what? That's a really good story. Who says that you can be mechayev? In fact, we know that the only way you can be mechayev in terms of nezikin is what's called garmi. Garmi means if I indirectly cause you a loss. If I didn't cause you a loss by a dime, you didn't go and destroy your day's work and punch it, right? There's nothing there. So what do? He caused you through his words to forego, to lose a day's work. That's called the garmi. Means I indirectly caused you a loss. So we know that by halachas garmi, there's no such thing as sheves. Sheves is when you damage a person and he loses out on work days. You have to pay him for those work days. You injure a person, he's in the hospital for a few days of work, he loses out those days of work, you pay sheves. Sheves is not nezek. Nezek is for breaking his leg. Sheves is for the missed work. So then you have to pay sheves. But by garmi, there's no sheves. Everyone agrees on that. When you have an indirect loss, so I don't have to pay sheves for foregone work. I only have to pay for the damages that I caused indirectly. But you can't, it's already too indirect, right? It's too far removed to say that I indirectly caused you damage and I indirectly caused you to lose out on a day's profit because of my damage. So everyone agrees that there's no din of garmi by sheves. So therefore, the Ketos Paskins can negate the Shulchan Aruch. He goes against the Shulchan Aruch. It says that, you know what? This employee cannot extract money from the employer. He's not allowed to take the money from him. And therefore the employer's off the hook. He's off the hook because it wasn't direct damage. That's it. So he says. However, all of the poskim say that this is a das yachid, and we don't even use it as a kimli. When it comes to hilchas choshen mishpat and a beis din, there's something called kimli, where if you have a legitimate minority opinion, that's the word legitimate is subject to different opinions. But if you have a legitimate minority opinion, you can claim like that opinion to avoid someone extracting money from you. So maybe the employer can say, I hold like the Maram. I hold like the Ketos, and therefore you can't extract money from me? No, this is such a minority opinion that we don't even allow it to be a kimli. So we throw that out. Okay, so now that's not the pshat. So let's go back to the Shulchan Aruch. So then what is the pshat? So the Sma says, no, you know what? It is garmi. It is garmi. And here there's garmi even by foregone wages. He doesn't explain it. And there's different persons trying to explain what's the svara, but clearly Ketos argues on it. And he says, no, it's garmi. You cause him an indirect loss because he had other jobs on the table. Evidently, that's enough. It's not sheves. That's not foregone work. It was on the table right now. And therefore, we do consider it as you caused me a loss right now. And he says, that's what it's garmi. However, other Rishonim say, no, it's something called davar ha'avud. Davar ha'avud. What's davar ha'avud? There's a big nafkamina between these two. So davar ha'avud means that the Ketos explains that something called kiblu zeh al zeh. When I'm an employee, let's say I'm the electrician, and you know that I have lots of jobs getting scheduled all the time, right? You know that. And you hired me to come on Wednesday in 2 weeks. Right? That was the case. Hired me to come on Wednesday in 2 weeks. Since you knew that I have lots of jobs and I'm a busy person, so you obligated yourself, kiblu zeh al zeh, that if you cancel, you're going to pay me the money. It's as if you obligated yourself, without saying anything, in a stam, you obligated yourself to guarantee me that day's work. Why would you guarantee me a day's work? Because I would only take your day and schedule on my calendar if you guaranteed it, because otherwise I have 10 other people calling me to schedule work. So it makes sense that anytime I have other work on the table, which was a prerequisite to call it a davar avud, that it's kiblu zelzeh, there's an unspoken understanding between the two parties that you're guaranteeing me that day's work. And if you don't have a good reason for canceling, that we call onus, if you don't have an onus reason for canceling, and you made a mistake, you owe me the money because that's the only reason I took the job, is because you guaranteed me that day's work. And that's what he says is the shot here by Davar of.
Please try to find more work.
Yes, he is complete to try to find one. Now, how much effort does he have to put in? It's unclear. No, I remember that's the thing, I just said, how much effort he has to put in is unclear. He has to, if whatever he normally does on the date.
Who doesn't have a packed schedule? They have enough that they can do it.
So if he does, and it says in the Shulchan Aruch that if he has other work that day, so then there's no loss whatsoever, and the employer, potential employer.
Yeah, right out, Steve, and he's only gonna be there for 5 minutes. And then in the middle, you say, I never mind, and.
Yeah, he didn't have another job, and they paid
it
for
up,
that.
so.
Yeah, so they paid, again, it's only if he has something lined up, and he cannot find something right now. Meaning, you made him lose a day's work, right? That's how you have to say it, you made him lose the day's work. Okay, now, here's the big question, that's gonna be a difference between these two opinions. Who has the onus of proof? So let's say, now I'm the guy who hired the electrician, and the electrician says, you made me lose a day's work, pay me. So I say to him, which you always look gonna say in a basin, prove it. If you want to extract money from me, you have to prove me, show me text messages, show me an email, show me a call from someone. Now, what's the level of proof? So the basin is gonna decide what he has to do to prove that there was other work potentially on the table. If the guy always has a packed schedule, so the basin can say, look, we know the guy probably got a call. He has work the day before, he has work the day after, the day after, the day after. So he clearly reserved this day for you, and he only had 2 weeks out when you hired him. Okay, fine. But let's say he's not working on every day and not every second. So he's proven. So let's see if anyone can say, would there be a nafkamina between saying it's garmi versus davra of? No, the muksak's always the guy is the employer. He's holding the money now. The employee wants to extract it. So would there be a nafkamina here? It's a little subtle, but here's the nafkamina. If you say it's garmi, we're in the sugya of nezek. When you're in the sugya of nezek, so then we always say hamotzi mechaber of alavaraya. If you want to extract money for damages, then you have to prove it. You can't take money away from me unless you prove it. But if you say that it's a societal contract, unspoken contract, that if when you hire me, you know I'm a busy guy, and if I'm going to take your job, it means you're guaranteeing me that day, unless you have a really good reason for canceling. Then it doesn't matter. You don't have to prove it within Motzi Mechaber al Varaya. From the beginning, when we shook hands, I guaranteed you that day, minastam. Minastam, if I'm a busy guy and I reserve that day and you know that I have other work available, yeah, then you have to pay in full, even without proof. And he doesn't need to show you different phone calls, because as long as the basin says the proof.
Not the, yeah, work.
No, that's the proof that he gave up other work for scheduling you, that he had potential other work that day. Now the basin's gonna decide whether, again, still he's gonna need a little bit of proof just to show that when you shook hands, that was the situation, but that's a much lower bar of proof.
That he needs to show.
You've already agreed to make the payment, and that you knew that he was a busy guy that could have had other work, that he did you, that when he scheduled that work, he was giving up potential other work that was on the table.
It's exact, and can you just tell me who said that? Would he been, without even be?
So if you say within Garmi, no, as long as you can. No, it doesn't matter who he said no to. Is that when I, the employer who hired him to do the electric work at my house, does the Beis Din say that from the look of this case, I, the employer, should have known that he had work on the table? No, you don't have to be a lawyer. It just has to be that the Beis Din has to agree that this guy knew when he hired the electrician that the electrician was foregoing other work by scheduling in that one day. He took the whole day out of his busy calendar and he scheduled you in, so then you'd owe it. So how do we pass him Lamaisa? So here we do say that there's a Kimli on the table. Israel Rosenberg, Dayan, Lakewood says that the Beis Din accepts a Kimli in this case. So what happens is, if the employer, the guy who hired the electrician, says, you have to prove it to me, midin nezek, midin garmi, that you had other work on the table, he can demand that proof. And then the guy would have to show a text or an email or a call, and the basin would decide what's proof. But he can't just rely on the shita that says, Davra Abud, Kibbu Zalzeh, that they agreed to an unspoken contract.
The guy, I will like this.
Yeah, it's very funny. It's in dinim mamonos to extract money. Because when you have mufsak, even mufsak is all it's midin chazaka. When you're a mufsak in money, it takes a real a chazaka is already a halachic proof that the money belongs to me. So if you want to take it out of my hands, you better have something really good to take it out of my hands. So a kimli is factored in.
Let's say
If they're two separate cases, yes.
I will like this for sure. I will like this for sure.
Not for sure. Say, I don't like this opinion in this case. I don't like this opinion in this case. I don't know about in one case. I don't think. I imagine if they're separate cases, it wouldn't be an issue. The basin is sometimes gives a kind of kimli for the person. He doesn't have to make the time.
Okay.
Basin says, we know this a lot. Yeah. I get
The Kimberly's not like a stock issue.
The acquiring.
no, you can say I hold kimli. No, in this case, it's burden of proof. But sometimes it could be that one says you don't have to pay the money at all, and the other one says you do. And you say I hold like the one that says I don't have to pay. That's it. Now, you need a dayan to know when you say kibbulis, meaning which opinion is strong enough to use as a kibbul. Okay, let's just plug it into the last case. So what about now our babysitter, our playgroup, preschool? So she reserved a spot, and now she says, I'm backing out. So would she have to pay for that spot that was gone, and now the woman can't fill it? She can fill it, and now she wants schar batala for a whole year preschool. That's a pretty good amount of money. Right? There's not such a big difference between having 10 kids or 11 kids in your class. So it's almost full tuition. Until that spot gets filled. Meaning, yeah, they're both gonna have to scramble. I'm sure the woman who changed her preschool.
What do you consider it? Awesome.
Right, so today.
So what do you need?
30, 40 years, 30, it's all right. Expensive.
Yeah, expensive covers. How much would you take to have one less kid in your class? Because it's a noise. No. I said that was the Moran. We don't pass him like that. That was the Moran. We don't pass him like that. That was by that was one shita. No, remember the case of the electrician was full. Said can't do a kimli like Moran. They already threw him out. So that was an example where you have a real case on the page with the ketos. The ketos is like a major opinion on the page, where the poskim say we don't use this even as a kimli. Whenever you're learning the sugyas in Kosh Mishpah, the first question you ask like a dayan when you're getting shimush is, okay, I saw that this opinion says this, and he argues on the Shulchan Aruch and everyone else. Can you see a kimli like this? Because it's going to make a world of a difference. In Kosh Mishpah, it's crazy. You have to know all the halachas poll, because you even have to know the minority opinions that don't agree with the Shulchan Aruch, because there's kimlis in play. So there's always minority opinions hold a lot of sway.
Would it make a difference if in schools it's sort of a normal thing for people to book a spot back?
If there's a minhag, then we could say minhag mabat al halacha. If there's a clear minhag. Here, there's not a clear minhag. A lot of times, the person backs out and they say the minhag, if anything, is the opposite. You booked a spot, you made me lose the spot, you owe me money. Right? If people just back out willy nilly, so then the whole system would collapse. Yeah.
So I think it's, I think, obviously. Love the difference here. That's not.
Yeah, but if they didn't, then there's no clear minhag, because no one ever does it the other way. Just verbal agreement, so then there's no minhag, because no one does that.
She signed it at the last minute, so I don't think, she probably didn't take someone else's spot.
That's what she's claiming. She says, I waited till the end of the season. You weren't full. You're the only priest that wasn't full. And who says you were going to fill the slot? Yeah, if you can prove it, then you can prove it. But I'm saying her taina is that minastam, you weren't going to fill that slot. Prove that you had someone that called and said, I want this slot. So again, it's going to come down to the mafocus we just said. It's going to come down whether it's going to be garmi, which is going to be nezikin, which means then the ganenet would have to prove it and show a call on the phone or a request on an email, or if we say that it's kiblu ze al ze davra avu, that it's just a social contract that they made between each other, that if you're going to take this spot, then you're doing it with the understanding that if you back out and you have to make me whole, so then she would have to pay, even if there wasn't a clear proof, even if it was just from circumstantial, that there probably would have been someone to take the spot. So it's going to come into that machlokas, and we're always going to be able to say garmi in that case. But let me give you one more situation that happens often. Let's say that there was 3 spots open. Okay, then this woman backs out, and then there was an agreement that if you take a spot, you would have to pay the money because you would reserve the spot. And then someone else comes and takes and joins the preschool. So you say, okay, good, someone else joined the preschool, you filled my spot, so now I don't have to pay you anything. And she says, what are you talking about? That person wasn't filling your spot, they were gonna come along anyway. And therefore you still owe me the money for your spot. You
didn't cause her.
There's still 2 spots. There's still 2 spots.
The point is, you didn't cause any more.
So you didn't cause her any loss because you didn't have,
She had no fact. Whether I came or didn't come didn't affect you.
very good.
Right, but if there's an
Because now it's you're not gonna cause me a loss. She didn't have to turn it. Okay. Let's say you guaranteed her the money. So let's say you guaranteed her the money if she didn't fill the slot. And now she says, so you guaranteed her the money, she gets to keep $1,000 if the slot doesn't get filled. You're booking this slot, you're paying $1,000 for this slot, and if it doesn't get filled, she gets to keep $1,000. So now someone. You have a contract. That's not the, it's what?
The contract is paying cancellation. Cancellation, wasn't a good deal.
So yes, that is ultimately gonna be the halacha. If you agree and then someone else joins, so we don't say that they filled the slot. She agreed it, so you have to pay, you lose a deposit. But
What if you have a lady?
If
If your circumstances change, then
if you agreed that even midin onus, it depends what it says in the contract, if you made a contract. If you didn't make a contract, then the last thing we'll end with is if there's an onus, everyone's puzzled. All the cases I said was that the guy was negligent and he forgot that the nutrition was hired that day. But if he had a medical emergency that day and he couldn't be home, he didn't answer his phone, he does not owe anything. When it comes to onus, if it was beyond your control and you were not able to answer your phone that day or have the electrician come to your house or FPL turned off the power and nobody could do work, then it's a loss for the POA. The worker gets the loss because he's trying to extract money from you and we can't prove whose fault it was because onus is beyond our control. So anytime it's onus beyond our control, so that's what the halacha would be. So keep that in mind whenever you hire someone. So it's always good to first stipulate everything in advance. But if you did not, so then you have to be very, very careful because if he can prove that you caused him a loss, you would be trying to pay that money in a base din. And even if you felt that you were innocent, so in the previous Gilgul, probably owed him money anyway. The sentence says you should be happy that you're giving him the money and you're getting your tikkun as well.
Good.